Well, okay, what if they fucking dragged Noam Chomsky's old ass out and had him say on a YouTube thing, I was wrong the whole time, actually, about criticizing your own country and all that stuff. Slavaj, glory to the heroes, or whatever the fuck. What would that change about anything? What would be different in the slightest about anything happening now?
I think they could notch a little victory in the posting war.
Yes,
they could notch a little victory about they
could feel like they have a power of disciplinary,
a
disciplinary power.
That's
another selling point.
What this is.
Look, I can keep these hogs in line. Please put me another rung up under the trough.
Arguments have been less offensive for their substantive content, which Eric has just outlined was more or less correct, but their intellectual carelessness, obvious counter-arguments go unaddressed, apparent contradictions unexplained, falsified predictions unaccounted for.
Oh, man. Well, we went into the argument haunted house. All these things are terrifying.
Bring this jumbo jet in for a landing here. So let's go. This apparent aversion to acknowledging complexity and moral ambiguity should trouble anyone invested in the left's political project.
Policy proposals are generally relatively binary. Why is this obligation that you have to have acknowledged every possible shade in what is supposed to be political speech when that is never expected out of anyone else because it's impractical? It's ridiculous.
You say that, but honestly, until we can acknowledge complexity and moral ambiguity, I have serious doubts about the left political project in America.
I know. They better if only they could get some of that complexity and ambiguity in there, I think they have a shot.
That's why the right wing has been so powerful in the last 6 years. Just really complex and ambiguous.
And they really embrace, and the thing is they embrace and acknowledge the complexity and ambiguity at all times.
Yeah, guys, if we can look at successful political projects in America for the last decade, look at what works. Kicking out the cranks, holding them accountable in front of everyone.
Yep.
Socialists forfeit all hope of persuading anyone outside their esoteric circles if they call for choking off military aid to Ukraine and demand a mutually agreeable diplomatic resolution to the conflict without, 1, addressing the obvious objection that Ukraine can only hope to secure such a settlement through force of arms, 2, offering an evidence-based theory for how Russia can be persuaded to respect Ukraine's territorial integrity through sheer diplomacy, or 3, explaining why the left would oppose sending arms to a democratic government struggling against domination by a far-right autocracy, given its historic support for arming the Second Spanish Republic and the Sandinista government.
Yeah.
The American left can't begin to fulfill its vision for change without dramatically expanding its ranks. Associating itself with undercooked defenses of toxically unpopular positions on the world's most salient geopolitical crisis seems like a poor way of going about that task.
Well, I mean, obviously it's correct that they need to get more numbers, but the idea that's what preventing the left from gaining popular currency and numbers is their lack of seriousness on Ukraine policy is something you can only believe if you are completely up your own ass.
Yeah,
I think if you actually had, if we had a politically engaged population that could be engaged realistically from a few relative commanding heights of media that were consistently putting out a left wing perspective, I think the idea of this isn't your problem, you shouldn't have to pay $10 a gallon gas for this, would probably go over pretty fucking well.
Yeah,
but only not if you're talking about serious people. But guess what? Serious people are never going to fucking care about do your leftist shit because they're against it. Their interests are in opposition to it.
The failure of the Bernie 2020 campaign, I hope everyone or most people saw the same thing that we did, which is that the way that Bernie could have succeeded was by activating a critical mass of non-voters. And the states where he won, where he did very well, he did that, or he came close to it. Where he fell short, he failed to do that. When someone is a non-voter, but is otherwise amenable to these types of policies, I do not think it's a lack of seriousness in Ukraine policies. If you think that the fucking woman cleaning up hotel rooms, the guy bussing tables, the people who have never voted, that you want to vote, if you think they did not vote for Bernie because they're like, he's kind of ambiguous on on Slava Ukraini, You are an article addict. You are so addicted to articles, it's insane.
Yeah, you need to go to a 12-step program. You
Yeah,
need to
and
wean
you
yourself
need to go
off
to-
of articles immediately.
Yeah,
but,
you need
like-
to go to article inpatient.
Yeah, like, and like Eric, you want to talk about like we said, like the problem with left wing in this country is it does seem cloistered in esoteric circles. There is no more esoteric circle than that of foreign
Yeah,
policy,
right.
the sensible foreign policy wonks
Yeah.
and good sensible liberal thinkers in America.
Yeah.
That circle is even smaller than the fucking DSA circle.
If the left was in power and affected foreign policy, but the only foreign policy was just like a sort of vulgar non-interventionism, at least 1 million more people would be alive today.
Yes, but even if it wasn't consistent and nuanced,
So it goes here. Of course, the hazards of ideological inflexibility aren't merely reputational. The American left inherited many of its present inverities from the Cold War era and the ensuing period of U.S. global hegemony. But the tradition of all dead generations weighs like a nightmare on
Oh,
the
shut
brains
the
of the
fuck up.
living. Incisive analysis
fuck up.
incisive analysis of the
Fucking
emerging
nerd.
multipolar order and the challenges it presents to egalitarian change will require nimble thinking. Succumbing to dogmatism will not only undermine the left's capacity to win power, but also its fitness for wielding it.
You know, the way he's talking about this, like, oh, it's all this ideological rigidity. I mean, another word for that is principles, like actual, like, sustained principles. And he's basically saying, like, look, it's all fine and dandy to believe a thing in abstract, but, when a foreign policy emergency happens and it's all hands on deck and it's all anyone's talking about and it's number one priority, amongst the media class, well, then all of a sudden your precious little ideological priors and principles, they have to be adjusting. You have to adjust to the new reality that there's a war on and you need to pick a side.
Yeah, show you're serious by changing your mind the second someone yells at you.
Yes. Yeah.
Like our friend Dan said this the other day, but it's just like, I mean, this is the same as it ever was, the same as it ever will be. And it's just like, the left opposed the war in Iraq when that happened. And did that help their electoral chances by adopting the morally and analytically correct position on the war in Iraq? No, it did not. And the idea now is like, it's not even a matter like of actively opposing Ukraine or like rooting for Russia. It's just a matter of like just simply not taking sides in this is not good enough for them. You've got to be sensible. You have to be nimble. You have to be morally ambiguous.
You have to be a smart boy.
Like a Graham Greene character or something.
And if the fact that nimbleness is rewarded by the Moloch demon state that we all agree is what the United States is, well, that's just a coincidence.
And I will cop to a certain amount of ideological rigidity that did prevent me from thinking it was likely that Russia would invade Ukraine as fully as it did. Sure. But I will I'm not going to get more limber on this because anytime the U.S. fucking State Department or fucking just the mandarins of foreign policy in this country, every time they're counseling for this country to adopt a course of action in any regard, it is never ever going to be the benefit of the flourishing of human life on this planet.
Right.
I do not believe them for a second. I do not believe that their priors or ideological commitments render them capable of judging or acting in the world in a positive way.
And I'd say that for myself, my failure to see that Putin was going to invade is, I think, of a piece with failure to really absorb that Trump was going to win in 2016. And it was both of those, I think, looking back, are for the same reason, and that I did not think that we were there yet. These things are all possibilities until they occur, and some part of you wants to put off the reckoning. But what we're seeing in the last decade certainly is that everything that that people kind of mused about in terms of what crisis would stand for in the 21st century are having to come to terms with the fact that the timetable is much shorter than that they wanted it to be. But that doesn't change the analysis.
I mean, I said this a couple of weeks ago, but I mean, I think what Levitz is really going for here as he auditions for the Jonathan Chait chair at New York Magazine is this idea that they all took it on the chin because of Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And what they really want, the ideological limberness that they're going for here is this sweet spot of just being like, yes, America has done some very evil things in very recent memory, but Russia is actually more evil than the United States.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing, what they're doing to Mariupol right now, or like they're bombing hospitals full of people, like shouldn't that be proof positive enough that there are still countries more evil than the United States?
Give us a break. Come on.
And I'm saying no.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
no.
Like at the very best, I'm willing to say that we are about as evil as Russia is. But the only problem is we're a lot more powerful.
Well,
than
that's
they
the
are.
thing, is that like every government is pretty much equally evil in that all of the incentive structures and power structures pull the worst people into positions of power and kind of cannot allow anyone else to hold power. The only real differentiation is the degree to which they can assert power over others, and that's where the actual like execution of evil does. And since we're the most powerful country, by definition, we're the most evil. Sorry.
And they don't want to give up the ghost on like the 90s era of America, like post Cold War, having to have a reason for why we're still a military hegemonic power, and that is humanitarian intervention.
Yep.
They still don't really want to give up the ghost on that because they don't
right
want
to protect, baby.
They don't want to give up. I mean, even if you believe that like it's horrible that like genocides and abuses against civilian populations occur, they can't give up the ghost on this idea that like, well, America, we always mean well. Like it's just like we can still do some good in this world with the power.
But all
that
the
we
bad
have.
that we're supposed to be fighting, that we're morally obligated to fight, is all in the context of a global order that we enforce.
Yeah. No. People say they hate Subway. You made the sandwich.
All right, let's leave it there for today. All right, Houston, we'll see you tomorrow night.
Pew pew.
See ya.
That was a good one.
Yeah.